The forest of Kethrin 7 burned with the dying light of twin suns. Sergeant Mara Lorne moved through the underbrush with practiced silence, her rifle held low, eyes scanning the alien terrain. The mission had gone sideways 3 hours ago, when her squad encountered a Vraxian hunting pack, apex predators that had turned this contested world into a graveyard for a dozen species. Now she was alone, separated and deep in enemy territory. A sound made her freeze, not the screech of a Vraxian warrior, but something smaller, weaker. She moved toward it, weapon raised, and found the source crumpled against a moss-covered boulder. It was a Vraxian cub. Mara's finger tensed on the trigger. Every instinct screamed that this creature would grow into something that could tear her apart. The cub, Draknor, she would later learn, was no larger than a wolf pup, but already its scales glinted like obsidian armor, and its claws could shred steel. Blood matted its fur-like mane, and its breathing came in ragged gasps. The intelligent golden eyes met hers, not with aggression but with the universal language of exhaustion and fear. "Damn it," Mara whispered. She should walk away. She should end this now. Prevent one more predator from joining the war that had claimed so many of her friends. But as she looked at the trembling creature, she saw something that transcended species. A child, alone and dying. Mara lowered her weapon. The cub flinched when she approached, trying to bare its fangs, but the gesture was pathetic. It could barely lift its head. She could see the problem now, a deep gash along its side, likely from an adult Vraxian. The species was known to cannibalize the weak. This cub had been cast out, left to die. "Easy," Mara said softly, knowing it couldn't understand her words but hoping her tone would translate. She removed her field medical kit, hand steady despite the absurdity of what she was about to do. The cub growled weakly as she applied antiseptic foam to the wound, but it didn't resist. Perhaps it understood in some primal way that she was helping. The foam sealed the gash, but the cub was badly dehydrated and in shock. It wouldn't survive the night alone. Mara checked her compass. Camp was 14 kilometers away through hostile terrain. She had maybe 2 hours of daylight left. She looked at the cub. At Draknor. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever done," she muttered, then carefully lifted the creature. It was heavier than it looked. Easily 30 kilograms of dense muscle and armored scale. Draknor tensed, claws reflexively extending, but Mara held firm, cradling it against her chest the way she'd once carried her nephew. The trek began. Within the first kilometer, Mara's arms burned. By the second, her shoulders screamed in protest. The cub remained still, its rapid heartbeat gradually slowing against her tactical vest. She talked to it as she walked, using her voice to maintain focus, to push back the pain. "My squad thinks I'm crazy, you know. Always have. I'm the one who feeds the local fauna instead of shooting them. Command says it's a security risk." She smiled grimly. "They're probably right." The forest grew darker. Mara activated her night vision monocle, bathing the world in green. Her legs trembled with each step, muscles protesting the double burden of the cub's weight and her full combat load. She should cache some gear, move faster. But something made her hold on to everything. Perhaps the soldier's superstition that abandoning equipment invited disaster. At the 8-kilometer mark, she heard movement. Vraxian warriors hunting in the darkness. Mara froze, pressing herself against a massive tree trunk, one arm holding Draknor close, the other reaching for her sidearm. Her rifle was slung across her back, no way to access it without dropping the cub. 3 Vraxians passed within meters, their bioluminescent markings casting eerie blue light. One paused, sniffing the air. Mara held her breath. The cub, as if sensing danger, remained absolutely still. After an eternity, they moved on. Mara released a shaking breath and continued walking. By kilometer 12, she was stumbling. Her vision blurred with exhaustion, and every muscle fiber screamed for rest. The cub had grown heavier, or perhaps she had simply grown weaker. It didn't matter. She'd made a choice, and humans didn't abandon their charges. Not ever. "Almost there," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring Draknor or herself. The camp perimeter lights appeared like a constellation through the trees. Mara wanted to cry with relief but forced herself to maintain discipline. She triggered her IFF beacon, identifying herself to the automated defenses. "Sergeant Lorne approaching," she called out, voice hoarse. "Hold your fire." "I'm carrying." A civilian. The gate opened. Lieutenant Voss stood there, weapon ready, eyes widening as he saw what she carried. Mara, what the medical tent now? Her tone left no room for argument. The camp erupted in controlled chaos as she staggered to the medical facility. Dr. Chen took one look at the cub and her exhausted sergeant and simply pointed to a table. Mara laid Draknor down gently, her arms finally releasing their burden. The cub's eyes opened, looking at her with what might have been gratitude or confusion. Perhaps both. Why? Voss demanded as medics worked on the alien creature. It's a Vraxian. It'll kill us all when it grows. Mara looked at her lieutenant, then at Draknor, who watched her with those intelligent golden eyes. Maybe, she said quietly. Or maybe it'll remember that when it was weak and alone, a human chose kindness over killing. That when it collapsed from exhaustion, a human carried it home. She met Voss's gaze steadily. We're not going to win this war by being more brutal than they are. We'll win by being more human, and humans don't leave children to die in the dark. 3 weeks later, when Draknor had recovered and been released into a neutral zone, the cub looked back at the camp once before disappearing into the forest. Mara watched from the perimeter, wondering if her choice had been foolish or visionary. She'd never know that years later, when human and Vraxian diplomats finally met to negotiate peace, a certain Vraxian ambassador would insist on one condition, that Sergeant Mara Lorne be present. The human who had carried hope 14 kilometers through hostile darkness, when it would have been so much easier to let it die.